Welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast, where I, Genevieve Faulkner, share what I'm becoming aware of. Hello and welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast. My name is Genevieve Faulkner, your host, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hi. So it has been another week. I woke up yesterday and saw the news like other people did that there is an online global community of men, over 60 million hits on a slow month, getting together to teach each other how to do things to their partners and wives while unconscious. And, I think that there is a global wounding that is up. I know that myself, it definitely triggered things within my world. There was a lot of disappointment that came up that this is where we are in society. There was definitely points of view of just this real grief that there doesn't seem to be like safe spaces for women. And that was re-triggering of the grief again, of my journey of leaving access consciousness, because for a time that was a safe space for me until, everything kind of was created the way that it was. And there is that mirroring in what has occurred, like in the reaction of what has occurred, where, I had this thing a couple of years ago where I was talking to somebody about something that they'd gone through. And, in the past, I would have recommended the things within access consciousness that can create change. And it was in that moment that I realized that I couldn't recommend it anymore. And I couldn't recommend it anymore because when something is, being managed or created by men in positions of power, if they do not have integrity, then that is no longer a safe space for women. And that was really, really sad for me. So, it's equally sad that there are so many women that are not safe in their own homes. And it's sad that for me, having daughters, like I look at my girls and I'm in question constantly about how do I help them navigate the world that we are currently in as they grow up and step into their teenage years? Like, how do I empower them while at the same time try to create the change that I can create and contribute to that, all the while acknowledging the reality of where the majority of the planet is at. So that's what's kind of like been on my mind this week. And I don't want to kind of just repeat things over and over in my podcast episode, but I feel like something like this, it has to be addressed. Like, it has to be addressed. There has to be conversation about it, because I cannot stand things being kind of like brought up and them being dismissed or not being acknowledged. Like, it's just not how I'm wired. I need the energy that is, loud to be talked about, to be acknowledged, to be dissipated and released, not kind of like just made to go beneath the surface or ignored, right? I don't think that people, like, I get that some people in leadership spaces, they may have a certain brand, but I think that when it's this kind of stuff, we all have a responsibility to actually have a conversation about it and not pretend that it doesn't exist, right? So I wanted to kind of just say, just as I kind of shared in the Epstein episode, one of the really sad things about this is the realization of where society is at, that society is that sick. We have men en masse doing this kind of thing. They're harming women, hurting women that they supposedly are meant to care about, right? That they've created lives with. And I think that we can go into a place of feeling like we don't have any power, just like with the Epstein stuff, but we do. And I think that part of the way in which to change this is for each of us to look at, to be present with. Like, what does it trigger within us when we hear all of this? How do we respond? How do we react? The reactions that we have will often indicate things that need more attention within our subconscious, right? So for me, the grief of there not being a safe space and access. Obviously, for me, there's something still that I need to release and change with regards to that experience. I will do that work. For each of you, there will be different things that may get brought up. So for people that have gone through any kind of sexual assault, this kind of thing can be so triggering. You know, it can reactivate all of the betrayal, the trauma, the feelings of powerlessness. And so there may be some healing that is required, some centering of yourself, being present with yourself, giving yourself the space to actually acknowledge any pain that comes up and release it. I think that I just also want to point out that society has been created partially because of all of the belief systems that we're carrying. So I saw this great post this week about a experiment that was done on mice, where the male mice were made to smell cherry blossoms while, you know, they were doing bad things to the mice. And it created a reactive trauma response within those mice. Now, what they found was that the offspring had the same trauma response for generations, right? That's how our genes work. We carry the information within our cells. We carry anything that is suppressed, unresolved, unacknowledged. We carry belief systems from the experiences that our ancestors have. Now, when we take on all of that, we actually have the ability to change it through epigenetics, the science of activating or deactivating genes, right? Using the power of our mind. We have that ability when we focus, when we meditate. Theta healing is one thing that teaches that, little plug. But yeah, it is something that teaches you to activate, deactivate cells to create a different possibility for your body. So we all have all of this coding that has gone back generations with regards to the way in which women and men have treated one another. And I think that is in the process of shifting en masse right now. But as it is, I think that we all have a responsibility to look at what it is that we're carrying, because each of us are carrying, whether you're a man or a woman, you may be carrying the wounding, the pain, the trauma, the rage, the resentment, the powerlessness of the women in your genetic line. But you may also be carrying the points of view of the men in your genetic line, whether you're a man or a woman. You may be carrying the entitlement of men, the feeling like women are property, the feeling like they're yours to, do whatever you want with, that men are more powerful, like that men are stronger, that men are the ones in charge of money. Like, there's so many different belief systems that we can carry on both sides. And it's only through acknowledging them and then doing the work to shift and change it that we create a different space to allow the generations after us to create a different possibility for them, because the pattern repeats as time goes on when it's not acknowledged and changed, right? Now, the pattern is changing, obviously as a society, we have evolved. Women have a lot more rights than they used to. So those belief systems are filtering out. But I do think that, the way that the world is, more is required. So for each that desire a change in the way in which men and women function with each other and the way that they're behaving, I think doing that inner work is vital to being able to contribute to creating that change. And on a personal note, you're less likely to attract these kinds of situations into your life if you're not holding on to the belief systems of the disempowerment of women. So there is a bonus for doing that inner work on yourself. I think that we also really need to, be willing to dissect what is occurring. Why is this occurring? Why is so many men needing to get together and create these sick spaces to get off on hurting the women in their lives? What's the wounding underneath? Like, what is going on? What is that? That needs to be addressed. And I think that part of that is quite possibly a whole heap of wounding with regards to the way in which they've been entrained into a patriarchy structure that doesn't really work for them either. And all sorts of wounding from childhood and whatnot, and the ways in which they perhaps feel disconnected from the women in their lives. I think that this is the thing, is that women have changed a lot because they were so suppressed, they desired freedom, and that motivated that change. So they've healed, they've grown, they've become more empowered. And in that, because the men, the old system was designed for men to be on top, for men to be in charge. And so when you're in that place, you don't need to change because everything's working for you. Like, that's the reality of men generations before. And so there hasn't been that same motivation for growth. Yet as the women change, they don't respond to the men in the same way. And so I think that there may be layers and layers and layers of frustration and rage and resentment that get built up in men because they don't know how to feel connected to the women in their lives, because the rules aren't the same anymore. But instead of learning to grow, evolve, and deal with whatever needs to be dealt with within their own systems, they're choosing to feed the disease instead and get together en masse and hurt women. And that is really sad, it's really sick, and it doesn't create a greater future for anyone on this planet. So, I think that as a society, we need to start asking these questions and start looking at what does a functional, healthy society look like where both men and women are empowered and acknowledged, right? Where they're not taking the power of another in order to feel important, powerful, or in order to get off in any way, shape, or form. And I think that there probably, at some point, hopefully, needs to be a correction with regards to the things that are contributing to the dopamine addictions that create people functioning in that way, in that kind of like need for gratification in a way that is completely eliminating anything else from the picture. If you look at things like the porn industry, I think that a lot of that is created with women pretending for men's fantasies, right? They're not enjoying it. So I think that there's a whole sickness there of men en masse being entrained into a false reality based upon what they're seeing that isn't actually real or true, and that is, not including women in the picture. So what does a different world look like where both parties are included? What needs to be created? What needs to be stopped? What needs to be changed? That's what I'm in question about. I hope that you guys watching are also in question about these things. But I do hope that you're also really taking care of yourself, because it is a bit of a bumpy time to be alive. If you're a woman right now, there may be all sorts of trauma be brought up, as I said. Just know, if you need some sessions, I am a safe space. I have no desire to manipulate, control, or build any kind of empire that disempowers others. I really desire for people who desire it to heal, grow, and change. So you're welcome to book sessions with me if you're requiring a safe space to heal or to process whatever it is that you need to process within your own world. I think that right now we are in this really strange place of having this separation between sexes because of the difference in growth. And so I think that a lot of women are at the place of asserting boundaries, of not allowing men to behave the same way. There's a lot of women out there that are not wanting to have relationships with men right now because they're not seeing a benefit to it. They're not seeing the growth. They're not seeing how that would contribute to their life. And so I think that, if you're a woman and you're, affected by this, and I think that we all are, looking at the ways in which you can begin to contribute to creating something different might be of benefit. So as I've said, doing the inner work, but also boundaries. So looking at, because within the DNA, a lot of us were trained into self-sacrifice, to pleasing, to not fully expressing our emotions because we're supposed to be the good girl that keeps the peace, right? That's what women are implanted and entrained into en masse. And I think that the opposite is what contributes to creating a greater reality. Be angry. If this angers you, be angry. Give yourself permission to feel it and express it if you need to. Acknowledge how you really feel. Don't allow people to take advantage of you. Draw the line in the sand if you need to. In relationships, if people are putting you into a role of having to take care of everyone and not acknowledging you in the process. I think the more that each and every one of us do this, the more reality has to adjust to include us in the picture as well, because the way the patriarchy structures have worked is that they've relied on the free labor of women in order to create, in order to feed themselves, basically, to have their reality work. And so demanding that there is more equality, I think, is something that is required in a lot of us. So yeah, I think there's that. But also I think the only other thing that we can do is create space to allow men to have to step up and to have to take accountability for their own healing and growth. Like, we cannot coddle them into this. We cannot get them to change, but we can be an invitation by not stopping ourselves, by continuing to grow. And that may mean for a time, maybe women are just going to create communities, together, rather than perhaps focus on relationships one-to-one with men, because that's where the connection is right now. I don't know. I'm just thinking out aloud because I can't believe that this is where we're at. Like, I just can't believe it. I think that if you are a man right now, be willing to look at the wounding. Look at the wounding. Look at how you feel about women. Like, be honest with yourself. I had conversations with people yesterday where I was kind of acknowledging, everything that was up and what was happening in the world. And I noticed a response of, oh, well, women give it too, right? Like, some people, not all men. They're saying not all men, or women give it too. No, I don't know any online community where women en masse are conspiring to knock out men and then do things to their bodies and film it for other men. I don't know about any of that. So maybe that's not completely true. Like, yes, perhaps there are things that women do to men. But what is it to the same extreme? And if that's the defense mechanism that you're going to when you're hearing about this stuff, take note, be aware. That is a defense mechanism based upon some sort of wounding that you have. Because if there is no wounding within you, you can sit with this in a different way. You can sit with the women in your life that are in reaction to this, that are being triggered by the fact that the men in their lives may not be safe, right? Because that's what it actually activates. When you read something like that online and you, put yourself in the position of those women trust the men that they're with. They believed that they could trust them. So it creates this kind of like space where you start to wonder who you can trust, right? As a woman, you start to wonder who you can trust, whether it starts to wear away at that ability to trust yourself, right? So if you don't have that wounding with a woman, if you don't have points of view and a need to defend, You can sit with a woman and allow them to express whatever is coming up with regards to, you know, all of that, without having to defend yourself in the process. Because if you truly know that you are different as a man, you don't need to defend men for the actions of these men, right? Because you know that you are not like that. So pay attention. If you are being defensive, why are you being defensive? What is the wounding that needs to be released? Please, I am asking you, please, for your own sake, for your children's sake, for the women in your life's sake, please do the work. Like, do the work. Whatever it is that you're feeling, do the work. Find someone who is willing to help you if you have issues with regards to women. Because right now, I do think as a collective, we require men to stand up and contribute to the men that are so lost that they are needing to do these things. But, you know, if men aren't willing to be vulnerable with themselves and get clear about what's really going on within, they cannot provide that space. So, is there anything else that I want to say with regards to all of this? I don't think so. I feel very frustrated. I hope that each and every one of you is taking care of yourself, and yeah, I hope that I do acknowledge that, given that this came out on the Aries new moon, or the day before the Aries new moon, that this is part of a collective kind of purging, so that we could get to like a new beginning. So how do we have that new beginning? How do we create that new beginning? How do we honor men and women in the process? And how do we work together to create a healthier society? That is what I'm wondering. And yeah, I hope you guys are wondering it too. So if there is anything that you would like me to do a podcast episode about, let me know. Any comments, feel free to leave them for me. I'm a little today, still moving through that energy, and I'm very much aware that that energy is loud in other people as well. So if you are, you know, in a vibe because of everything that you're aware of, just ask yourself the question if you are purging or releasing stuff for the collective as well. And yeah, acknowledge what isn't yours. You don't have to process everything. So thanks, guys. Until next time, see you later.